Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Homestead Challenge podcast. Today, we are going to talk about a topic that I don't think I have ever talked about on the podcast, but I actually believe is so important to what we all care about. So, as homesteaders, I feel like a lot of what we do is very value based. And we really try to align our entire lives with our values. And I feel like finance is actually um, really important to that, and aligning our finances along with those values will help us really move forward and reach those homesteading goals that we all have. So I know so many of us want to do more and bigger things, and there's just so much. But yeah, a lot of us maybe need a little bit of help with our finances. So today we're going to be talking with Krista from Money Mindful Moms podcast, and I'll let her introduce herself. Krista, could you tell us about yourself, your show, your mission?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me, Brittany. I'm so excited to be here and talking with your people, and I'm just honored. I am obviously a mom. I am married to my college sweetheart. We have a 15-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 3-year-old. So they're spaced out pretty far, which means we are kind of in the middle of lots of different seasons of life. Having a high schooler versus a 3-year-old makes things very interesting, and all the things that our days are filled with. But we are actually in the middle of our own six-figure debt payoff, and we started. Gosh, it's been years now, honestly, that we've been slowly making our way out of it, and that was kind of intentional on our part. We chose to do it a little bit slower. My husband is a teacher, and so we're trying to make this happen on a pretty modest income. We live in a high cost of living area, and I am primarily home with our kids, although I do have some ways that I make money from home to help, make it happen a lot faster. But it was just really important to us to have a lot of time together as a family. And so we're willing to do it a little bit slower and not work millions of hours a week to make it happen. And so I started sharing a little bit online about our experience with paying off debt, and I found that there was a lot of moms who were interested or intrigued but maybe felt a little bit of shame or a little bit of embarrassment around their financial situation. And one thing about me is I'm not afraid to talk about it. So I was like, well, let me start sharing more. And it kind of turned into a podcast and just a lot more from there. But my core belief is that moms with money skills will change the world. And I believe that because, we have seen what happens with, money in the hands of the wrong people, but I believe that moms really want to do good things in the world. And so if I can be a small bit of encouragement or a little piece of that puzzle for moms on how they can get their finances right, and if there's enough of us who have our finances right, like we could really make real change in the world. And so I want my little corner of the internet to be that type of encouragement for moms.
I love that so much because there's so many of us in my community. That I'm a stay-at-home mom. I know a lot of others are, or maybe they are part-time working moms, and even we definitely have some full-time working moms as well. But all with kind of bigger dreams. And I love that you said about doing things a little bit slower or a little bit just more realistic. Because a lot of the times I see these things online, I'm like, right now my husband's in the police academy. Like we have very modest income as well. So yeah, doing things kind of on our own terms, but to make a big difference is really great. So like what are some like the most common mindset blocks that you see to people like not wanting to start this journey or just like totally blocking finances out of their minds? What do you see often?
Yeah. Honestly, I think most people want to do well with finances, right? Like there's not very many people that are like I don't care at all or it doesn't matter to me, but usually what I find happens especially with moms is that we just have a lot on our plate. And so it just feels like one more thing and we just kind of put it at the bottom of our to-do list and it's like, "Well, I'll get to it. I'll get to it." And then when you do have a few spare minutes, it's like, well, do I do the laundry or do I fix my whole financial situation? That seems like a lot. I'm just going to go ahead and do the laundry. And it just keeps like being this rolling to do item that we don't get to. And it feels easier to put it off. And I get that because I'm a busy mom too, and I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit more on how we can kind of push through that, but that's just been my experience of like what that mindset block is. It's not that you don't want to do it. It just feels very overwhelming to start.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that it's so important for moms to be financially literate. I mean, my situation's a little bit unique. My husband is a military helicopter pilot and he's going to be a police officer. So I'm like, I got to figure this stuff out. I mean, no, you don't want to, put any bad juju on the situation, but he has some dangerous jobs. So it's really important that we are uh just financially literate. I feel like I'm mostly in control of our budget in our homes, which I actually find that a lot of moms are. That like I'm well, he makes the money. I kind of, I don't know, manage it or mismanage it depending on the day, right? So, what are like some motivating things that you have come across when it comes to tackling debt, or if somebody's beyond that, maybe building that emergency fund or beyond?
Yeah, and I have had to lean on this a lot just because when you are doing it much slower, it sometimes feels like you're just treading water or it feels like it's just taking forever. And I know that it sounds cliche, but just that idea of keeping your why at the front of your mind. Why are you doing this? It can be a lengthy process sometimes, but in my mind, I just keep telling myself, like, hey, a year from now is going to pass anyways. So I can be a year closer to my financial goal or I can be a year farther away from my goal. Like I get to choose. And so sometimes it's just like those little pep talks that you have to give yourself and not expecting yourself to be perfect every single day, because I certainly have those days where I'm like, why did I buy that thing? Or why did I just run through and get a coffee when I can make coffee at home? But it's the long game that you're after, right? Not just the day to day, but like what do you ultimately want?
Yes. Yeah, I really like that because that's even in motherhood, they always say, like the days go by or the days go by slow and the years go by fast, but you can really make a lot of progress in a year, even if,
100%. Yeah.
a year seems like a long time. So a lot of us do want to contribute financially if we're not doing so right now. Do you have any good tips for one, like how you can contribute financially, and two, how do you balance it with, working, family life, all that kind of thing?
Yeah. I think for me, I have always been an encourager of every family making the best decisions for them. I think sometimes we look for like a one size fits all answer of like, do this step and then this step and then this step. But I think every family has to kind of decide for themselves, like, hey, what do we want to do to either increase the income or decrease the expenses? And so I feel like my job is to help them come up with all possible solutions, and then they get to decide which solution is best for their family. And the good news is we live in a time where there are so many options for moms. Like I think back to when my mom was my age and we were really little, and I remember she had a home daycare, and she told me when I was older that that was really the only way that she was able to be home with us when we were little, because there wasn't all of these sort of like shades of gray areas for moms to be able to make money from home. But I think that once you make that decision for your family, if you decide that you do want to primarily be home, it's okay to say, "Hey, my contribution financially to our family is my job is to save us as much money as possible." And so that looks like not paying for childcare, not paying for some of the expenses that do come along with working outside of the home. And then also, how can I meal plan? How can I make things from home, make things from scratch so that we are saving our family money in those ways. It might, like I said, it might be a little slower process if you're doing it on less, but if it's important to you for you to be able to be home with your family, then you can make that work too. So I think each family really has to decide for themselves, but just know that there are options no matter what you decide.
Yeah, and sometimes I think looking at different things that I've tried, that the saving money actually does make more of an impact on my family than me trying to bring in some kind of small income from home and being stressed out about that, because I've been there. I've tried some different part-time jobs from home, and they just were not compatible with me and like my family, and then kicking my little kids out and all sorts of things when I was
And
trying
then
to
you're,
have
like,
meetings.
exhausted, and then you are like, "All right, I don't feel like cooking, so now we're gonna go, drop $50 on some takeout," and yeah, been there.
Yes. So, say you're on this journey to um, want to like maybe leave a full-time job and come home, or wanting to change kind of what you're doing in your finances, like maybe you are wanting to start saving more and doing things from scratch and eating out less, but your partner is maybe not on board with that plan. Do you have any good tips for kind of how to navigate that situation?
Oh my gosh, I love this question, and I see this a lot that somebody will say, "I made a budget, but my husband is just not on board. Like, I can't seem to get him to care about this." And I think sometimes what we can do, especially as women, is sometimes we like to kind of control the situation a little bit. I'm guilty of this too. And so what we tend to do is we get really excited about something like a budget or a plan that we want to implement. And so we get excited, we make the plan, and then we drop the plan on them and go, "Hey, look, I made this plan. Let's do it." And then we wonder why maybe they're not super thrilled. And so, my advice is to always have a conversation and try to create a plan together instead of you being the one to create it and then just kind of telling them to fall in line. And so, because people will support that which they help create, right? So, they're going to be more excited to be a part of it if they had a hand in creating it. And so I know that it's not easy, but sometimes what people will do is they wait until there's like a financial emergency to have these conversations. And that's typically when we find that we have like, emotions are high, stress is high, and it's not always a productive conversation. And so I would say, if you can, even this weekend, just have a conversation. Don't put it off. Don't wait until there's a fire that you have to put out. Have a conversation where you're just simply coming together to talk about what the common goal is, and kind of, it doesn't have to all happen in one conversation. It could just be starting with talking about what the goals are, and then you're coming back together again, maybe with some of your numbers to figure out where are you starting from, and then maybe after that it's coming back together to actually create the plan. But I think instead of waiting until it's like just this emergency where you're like fighting with each other about it, instead you're coming at it from a place of strength and a place of togetherness.
Yeah, so that kind of to me sounds like what might be the first step in doing all of this. Do you have like the first couple steps for those of us who have either tried in the past? Like I personally have tried like I do like the every dollar app, but then like some months I'll just not do it at all, and then some months I'll do it and some I won't. Then I've tried spreadsheets, and sometimes I do that, sometimes I don't. So do you have any tools or first steps? Like what's the first where do we do? Help us
Yeah,
out.
if you're like, "Okay, I am brand new to this, please walk me through this." And actually, I have somebody that I'm doing this with right now, so this is fresh on my mind. But the first thing that I had her do was come up with her reasoning why she even wanted to do this. Because one of the things, if you're not a numbers person, which by the way, I'm not a numbers person either, so I'm with you on that, it can be overwhelming to like just look at a spreadsheet or look at your bank statements and just kind of like, this is not how my brain works. And so come up with the reason why you want to do it, create whatever that goal is, the big picture thing, and then know that the numbers are just part of that like overall picture. And the first thing that I typically have somebody do is pull up about 6 months worth of bank statements. And I know that that sounds like a lot, but the reason why I say 6 months is because if you just go back a few months, sometimes there's like outliers in there. Like if you, right now, we're recording this in January. If you go back 3 months, we got the holidays in there, right? So your spending is going to be kind of out of whack, or if you went on vacations or you had birthdays or whatever. And so 6 months kind of gives you a better picture, and just start going through and looking for patterns. Like you can even use color highlighters if you're like a visual person. And, pink is all the times we went out to eat, green is groceries, whatever, just to kind of look like, oh my gosh, this week, I went to the grocery store 7 times. Why was I there so many times? Like, obviously, I'm going over budget in those areas because I'm noticing these patterns. So that's typically where I'll have someone start before we even create a budget, before we even like talk about paying off debt, is just kind of getting an awareness for where you're starting from. And it's really eye opening. I mean, this person that I just did this process with, she sent me a message and was like, I put my numbers together and realized that we are spending $600 a month more than we make every single month. And she had no idea until she started going through things. So it's not easy, of course, to face the numbers sometimes, but I do feel like it's so important if you want to move forward to know where you're starting from.
Yeah. That's so true. I remember when I first did that, like, I think I did Financial Peace University with Dave Ramsey like 10 years ago or so. And that first time we were newlyweds, and yeah, it was a lot.
All
It's
we've all been
scary.
there. I get it.
Yeah. So, okay. So that's like the practical stuff, right? Like, we're going to go back, we're going to look where everything's at. But I feel like for me, the hardest part hasn't been necessarily the numbers. It's more of changing like me, my mindset. So I grew up as like ultra consumer. Like, we went shopping all the time. Like, girls did. I remember like going to the mall having bags. Now I can't even imagine how that, like, going with like a bunch of shopping bags. That would be like $1 million these days. But but we were like major shoppers. And then moving towards this like homesteady life that I tried to have, we try to create a lot more than we consume, right? And it's all about sustainability. And I think that saving money is so intertwined into that. But I still tend to fall into some serious consumer mindsets, especially when I want to reward myself or I want to feel better about a bad day or things like that. So, do you have any like mindset tips for people who really struggle with that aspect of it?
Oh, yeah. This is so common. And I will be the first to admit, sometimes when I'm just having one of those days, I just want to get a coffee and walk around Hobby Lobby and just, see all the pretty things, buy some things that I probably don't need. And so I get it. So I think, we get in that instance that I just shared, we get this like little dopamine hit, right? From when we spend money and it's like exciting. And then that kind of wears off. And then we're like, oh, I probably shouldn't have done that. And so I think the shift is, how can I learn to get as much joy from saving as I do from spending? And when you are used to that dopamine hit coming from spending, like how can we shift that to saving? So if it's, having a special time where you transfer the money from your checking to your savings, and like you enjoy your cup of tea or whatever, and you like make it an experience to where you're excited to do that, or to invest or pay off debt, or wherever you're at with your financial goals. But I know I'm sharing with you the what, but not necessarily the how. Is like, how do we do that? And it's a process. And it again, it comes back to, we don't get it right every single time. But I always tell people, every time you make one of those decisions, you're casting a vote for the type of person that you want to be. And it just takes a majority to win. So we feel like we need every vote. Every single time I need to make the best decision, and that's just not true. It's just a majority. So if you mess up, if you spend the money and you're regretting it, that's okay. We can recoup, and we're just going to, the next time, make a different decision. And as long as we are sort of tipping the scales in the right direction, more times than not, you're heading in the right direction.
I really like that. I like the whole like having a whole, I don't know, a little party about, about
Yeah, making
if
it a
you chose
party to
not
save
to.
money.
Yeah, if I chose not to spend that day, I that's fun. I like that kind of making it a ritual almost.
Yeah.
That's yeah, I like that a lot. So with the mindset thing, I know that we can really feel overwhelmed. As a mom, as somebody, especially my audience who's trying to do like all of the different things from home, a lot of them even homeschool as well. I don't, but I know a lot of people do. Um, like I feel like adding on the money aspect is can be really overwhelming. And also, I don't know. I feel like sometimes it could almost even create like resentment towards the spouse, which we talked a lot about before, but we're like, isn't this your realm kind of thing? So what do you do, I guess, with the overwhelm, or do you have any tips to kind of just about balance in general?
Oh my gosh, if you figure it out, definitely let me know because I
Yeah,
I
right?
definitely have not figured out the balance thing yet. But what I will say is the good news is once you have your financial plan, it really doesn't take very much time to maintain it. It is some work on the front end, I would say, to like get a plan in place, like figure out what the steps are that you want to take to get to where you want to go. But once you have it, it's really just a matter of kind of like automating some payments and checking in on it and reevaluating when you need to. So that's good. Now, as far as what I tell myself when it feels hard, I try to remember what my kids are going to thank me for when they're older. Because I think it's really easy as parents to get so caught up in today and what am I doing today for my kids? And that's important, right? Like, we want our kids to have a great childhood. But as someone who came from a family who didn't necessarily have the financial piece in play, and now that I'm seeing what that means as an adult, I don't want to do that for my kids. I don't want them to be stressing when they're adults about finances. And so to me, it's okay, this might be hard, but just like I want to make sure my kids are doing the piano lessons they want to do, and I'm shuffling them around and I'm doing all the things for them today, I want to do things for them as adults too. And so by me taking a little bit of time to get this right, that is setting them up for future success with their finances. And I know they're going to thank me for that as an adult. And so it's worth it to me to put a little bit of effort or time into this. It might not be easy, but it's worth it.
Yeah. Oh, that's so important. That's what I feel like I didn't get necessarily the best financial education from my parents. Love them. No offense, mom and dad. But
Yeah.
it would definitely have helped me out a little bit more to do so. And as being the woman, I feel like it's really like we do guide the family because my husband did grow up. I feel like his parents are much more financially savvy, even though maybe they're like we're kind of the same level of incomes. What they chose to do with that and how they chose to save was very different.
Yeah.
So um, seeing that and me starting off in our marriage, kind of going with what my mindset was and just what I was used to doing, kind of drove us off in the wrong direction to begin with. Um, Not to say that my husband's, he's a great guiding force in our family, but I just feel like the moms spend the money. You really do guide where most of the money goes with the big stuff, right? The food, the housing, the things that are the most expensive.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think sometimes I think as moms we kind of minimize what what we're able to do, and I'm like, "No, you are probably the one making the majority of the buying decisions, like the day to day. If you have what it takes to juggle taking care of kids, you have what it takes to take care of finances."
yeah, yes, absolutely. I love that. So, okay, so now we like looked back at our expenses. We are in a bit of a better mindset. Like, what are your next steps for someone after, like, as they're creating a budget and making a plan and goals moving forward?
Yeah. So I work with a lot of people who have debt. So a lot of what I do is that debt payoff plan of, where how are we going to get the debt paid off and at what pace do you want to get it paid off? I think like you had mentioned back at the beginning, sometimes we see people and it's like, "Oh, I paid off $100,000 of debt in 6 months." And you're like, "What in the like that just doesn't feel realistic." And so I think setting up a timeline with someone on what that debt payoff looks like and at the pace at which they want to do that, because let's be real, a lot of us, at least in this day and age, are working with higher cost of living and sometimes like tighter lower incomes, and so we're trying to sometimes make it work on a longer timeline, so to speak. So after we have kind of looked at our numbers, the next step is usually that debt payoff plan, and that way after I'm done working with somebody, they have a plan that they can use 6 months, a year, whatever, after our time together to know what they need to do to get it paid off. And they know exactly when they'll have it paid off.
Awesome. Okay, so people can listen to everything you have to say and way more tips over on the Money Mindful Moms podcast. You can listen to that wherever you are listening to this podcast right now. But what other tools do you have to offer? Services do you have if people are looking to dive a little bit deeper?
Yeah, so podcast is a great place to start. My Instagram is another place. It's just Money Mindful Moms. And then just as of February 1st, I started a new club called the Money Mindful Moms Club. And I'm really excited about that because it's a virtual sort of place and it's for moms who just want to focus on their money and do it on their own terms and on their own time. It's kind of like come to the classes that you want to come to, skip the ones you don't, use the resources you want, skip the things that you don't. And I think the thing that I'm most excited about is it's kind of a unique model where it's a pay what you want club. So you can come take whatever you want and pay whatever you feel like it's worth to you to be a part of the club. And if, you have a down month and you're not able to contribute, you're still part of the club. We're still happy to have you. But that was just kind of my way of being able to sort of reach the masses with moms because I can only work with so many people one-on-one. So I'm really excited about this new chapter for Money Mindful Moms.
Awesome. I love that. We are all about like no pressure, kind of do what you want and where your values align. So that's um, absolutely what we talk about
Same.
over here. Yeah.
Yep.
So thank you so much, Krista. It was great talking with you. Everybody, go check out the Money Mindful Moms podcast. And thank you so much. Until next time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.